At first glance and after first plays, it's pretty easy to draw comparisons between The Estates and Skyrise. They both see players erecting buildings on the game board, and they both use auction and bidding mechanics to have you earn the right to do so. And honestly, in 2025, who doesn't want to be a real estate visionary, spending millions to cover the skyline in obnoxious buildings? But what's interesting is that despite these games sharing some of the same mechanics and DNA, one is a game that I'll advocate for and come back to often, and the other is one that I'll mostly avoid. Beyond wanting to create entertaining and informative videos for all of you in the AYCB community, I also set out this time to answer a question for myself, which is why do two similar games leave me with such dissimilar impressions? And ultimately, I thought if I could answer that question, I could probably answer why I love tomato soup and I hate tomatoes. It just doesn't make any sense. In The Estates, you'll be choosing from a myriad of wooden pieces to auction off around the table. If you're setting the auction, you'll get to watch as the other players around the table bid in clockwise fashion before ultimately deciding if you're willing to top the highest bid and take the item for yourself, or if you'd rather receive the cash from the highest bidder and let them take on the responsibility and rewards of actually placing the piece on the board. The most prominent of these items that you'll be potentially auctioning off is the floor cube. These cubes will be placed on development rows in predefined spaces to establish buildings. The number on the cube you place represents the potential points up for grabs, but on future turns, new building cubes of lower numbers may be placed on top of that cube, potentially transferring ownership of the building to the player who owns the company certificate of the same color as that cube that was just placed. And then once a roof is ultimately placed on a floor cube, the building is finished and will be worth an amount of points equal to all the numbers added up among the floor cubes and the roof. But only the player owning the company certificate of the highest colored cube will be eligible for those points. I say eligible because ultimately only 2 of the 3 development rows will score positive points. The unfinished third development row will score negatively rather than positively for everyone present there and eligible to score. As you can imagine, this is the element of the game that turns friends into enemies as you watch your pal's face sink, realizing their 21-point tower is suddenly going to be worth minus 21 points instead. And with a slew of special wooden pieces to consider auctioning that affect the board state in other ways, your friends will be hating you in no time. Meanwhile, there's Skyrise, which takes the auction mechanic and ties it in neatly with area majority. Players will start the game with a bunch of towers with pre-designated numbers on them. As starting player, you'll choose a legal neighborhood on the game board to place one of these towers, and the number on it will represent the bid you're making to erect your tower on that neighborhood. But this is where the twist comes in. Oh yeah. Clockwise around the table, players will place their towers of higher numbered value adjacent to the neighborhood that was just placed in, but they're no longer bidding for the previous neighborhood, but rather the new neighborhood that they are placing their own piece in. And this will continue on until everyone has passed or until you've placed a bid on a spot with no legal adjacent spots for your opponents to make competing bids on. And while you're doing this, you'll also be scooping up neighborhood discs and patron discs from your claimed neighborhood spots that will give you additional ways to score points. This means that what starts as an eager and hopeful bid for a certain neighborhood on one side of the board can end with a successful bid by another player for an entirely different neighborhood on the other side of the board. So ultimately, both of these games are rooted in the auction and bidding mechanic, and it's one that I appreciate and more than that, love. And you might love it too if you're checking out these videos because maybe you've played games like Modern Art or other auction games in the past. So then why is it that ultimately I enjoy Skyrise and will constantly come back to it, and The Estates is one that I'm just sort of happy to move on from? Well, to answer that, I'm going to invite you to go a little deep with me. And you'll see the screen is slowly zooming in. It's a metaphor for going deep. As I give you a scenario, and that scenario is maybe one that you'll be able to resonate with or that you can relate to. You schedule a game night with your 3 best friends, and they've been your best friends for a long time. You just don't quite see them that much anymore. And it's not because you don't want to. You love spending time with them. It just seems like in spite of how much you want to see them, you struggle to find that time. You know, there are just other responsibilities that mount up that have to take priority over a board game night. But sometimes you do find the time and you put one of those board game nights in the calendar and you are pumped. But then somebody's kid gets sick And obviously, family has to come first. And then someone else doesn't have access to a vehicle anymore that day and they can't make it. And maybe someone else has to work late. Or maybe yourself, you're feeling so down and depressed and beat down by the world around you that even something as uplifting normally as spending time around the table playing board games with people that you love becomes hard to endure because you're worried about being on, about being good enough. And you're worried that you're going to bring people, loved ones, that you invite over around the table into the space that you're in and bring them down with you. And you just can't bring yourself to do that to people that you love. But now imagine all the tabletop stars align. You get the Estates to the table, and it really is a game that has the DNA and the potential to be insanely fun and full of laughs in that session. And it's one that you end up looking back on in 3 years' time with nostalgia over how fun it was. It really can be that kind of game. Only the way to win, the way to do well and excel at the Estates is to put your opponents in situations where they can feel like their game is over halfway through or even sooner. And that they don't just lose, they lose with a score of -30, and that's often the norm with the Estates. You know, if this was the 5th or 10th play, that could be seen as a fun challenge, something to claw back to see if I can win in this predicament. But if it's your first time playing, if it's your second time playing, if it's the first time you're playing it in 6 months or a year since the last time you played it because of the frequency that your group can get together, what could have been a fun challenge is now just demoralizing disappointment. And to be completely fair, that is what makes the Estates great. And yes, I did say great, you're not hearing me wrong. You might not have expected that based on how I've talked about it in this video, but I really do think the Estates is a great game. You're constantly having to consider the strategies of all other players in the game. One round you'll be sure that the first development row is never getting completed, and before you know it, after spending a ton of money and investing heavily in row 2, the tides have swung due to a couple auctioned off building permits that have seen row 2 become increasingly hard to complete. Honestly, it's the board game version of being at the grocery store and being in a line and seeing that the one beside you has less people in it, moving over to that line only to discover that the person in front of you is trying to feed a family of 14 with their shopping today, and you see the other line you previously were in going by like a summer breeze. That's kind of what the Estates can feel like at times, and when it's functioning in that way and you embrace it, it can be a ton of fun. And despite that, you still have ways to hoard cash in an ever-decreasing economy to try and find opportune moments to influence the board back in your favor, or at least cause enough chaos and disarray to have your opponents make mistakes that leave openings for you to crawl back. Yes, the Estates is a great game. It's just a great game that's not for me and might not be for you if you share any of my sentiments. If you come into playing the Estates with a history of tabletop gaming or a history of playing similarly mean games with take-that mechanics, then you already know that what happens around the board game table is not indicative of how you feel about your friends. All board games, most board games, are competitive and they have a winner and a loser, and half the time the people that are there playing are there more for the fun of it anyways than they are to necessarily leave as the winner every single time. But even the initial turns of the Estates are punishing. If you don't manage to get a company certificate, you're not going to score any points, which means that in the first 10 minutes of the game, someone can feel several steps behind in a way that really just doesn't feel great. What if someone around the table only plays games once or twice a year? Or what if games for them are more a means to an end? They are a board gamer, but the reason that they do it is more so to play with the people around the table, spend time with loved ones they don't see as much anymore. And then suddenly they have no chance of winning due to their lack of strategical focus, or maybe it's just their unwillingness to be as mean as the other people around the table, a meanness that is almost required to play the Estates. And then suddenly you feel more disengaged from the conversations. Maybe your turns feel like they have much less impact, and it's not just you that feels that, it's everyone. And before you know it, the game's over and everyone is packing up and leaving, and you're left looking forward to the next gaming night, if you can get it in the calendar, if everyone's schedules align. Okay, now I'm gonna pause here. mainly because I'm making myself a sandwich. I got a little hungry. But also because I know I'm being a little dramatic. And I know I'm describing a hyper-specific situation that might have you thinking, how often is that going to happen, really? But I guess that's my point. At a time when the world is finding more and more ways to be increasingly ugly, time spent around the table doing things that bring you joy, that bring smiles to people's faces with the people that you love, I mean, they're more important than they've ever been. And so it's a really tough sell for someone like me who has anxiety, social anxiety specifically, to suggest a game where I'm encouraging people around the table to be mean to each other and not maybe knowing for certain how that's going to land with everybody. Or that alone might disclude someone, if disclude is a word. And so why would I pick a game like that if there are alternative options that do the same things, that are more likely to have everyone have a great time and leave with a good experience? It's even harder sell for me when I think about the state the world is in right now, where we're being told that what success looks like is how mean you are, how ruthless you are, that lacking empathy is somehow a positive trait that we should aspire to. Those are things I absolutely don't believe in, and it's hard to promote a game where the meaner you are, often the more you'll succeed. Now that's a lot of talk about the estates, and probably a lot more than you were expecting from a video comparing two board games. And there is another game here that we haven't said nearly as much about. So what about Skyrise? Well, it still has the auction bidding mechanics that I love, but it's also more lenient, but not in a way that diminishes the enjoyment or the value. You will lose bids and you will lose territory that you really want. But you can also see everyone's building values, and with just a little planning can find opportunities to win neighborhoods before even placing your towers, so to speak. You'll see what others are capable of being able to bid and then use that to your advantage. You'll push others to use their higher value towers for spots that you are willing to give up in order to give yourself an advantage to win the neighborhoods you really want. You'll find alternative point sources with patron discs, using secret information that you may have access to before anyone else at the table does. You'll look ahead to Era 2 of this game because yes, this game has 2 phases. We'll get access to an exciting wonder with its own unique power, one that you'll choose from options so you don't feel restricted, but so that you'll also come back to each game with new powers to discover and try out for yourself. I like the estates, I really do, and I respect it for what it's doing and for the mechanics and the design of the game itself. And it might even be the better game of the two, but Skyrise is the better experience. It leaves me happier when the gaming night is done. It leaves me feeling more sure of the fact that everyone that was there had an enjoyable time, even if the game isn't one that they personally want to come back to. It's exciting, leaves you with things to discover on the next play, and has enough tactical decision making to have you rethinking decisions you made and looking forward to putting some of those discoveries into practice next time. It's a flawed game at times. It offers what I think is actually a pretty poor 2-player experience that I personally wouldn't be coming back to. It also can lead to a lot of analysis paralysis because of the sheer number of spaces you can extend your bids to. But at the end of the day, it's fun. And it offers, for advanced players, ways to kind of make the game more mean or to block each other and to really get into a fighty space that kind of feels more akin to what the Estates is offering, just not quite as extreme. The Estates in all of its mean glory might be the exact type of game that your group is looking for. You might find that the meanness of the Estates actually ends up becoming its charm. It's the reason you come back to. You develop meta strategies over time. You play it with the same people enough times that it lands for you in the way it's intended. And honestly, if that's happening for you, that is great. If anything, I'm mostly jealous that you're experiencing the Estates as intended. At times, I'm jealous of Carlos, someone who loves the Estates, that he gets that out of it in a way that I can't. For me, the anxieties of everyone else's experience around the table with a game that has a higher potential to be divisive and to cause distress for some people is enough to steer me away. And even just the sheer fact that I might not, that session, get out of it what I'm hoping to get out of a board game session with people that I don't maybe see as often as I would like is enough for me to suggest alternative auction games. For me, especially mean games need to be extra good for them to be one that I'm suggesting regularly, or especially to rank among one of my favorites, or to have be a mainstay in my collection. And believe me, they do exist. They might be few and far between, but a game like Bus is one that I discovered just this past year, and that is a mean game, and I love it to pieces. Board game pieces. But ultimately, if my friends are coming over and I'm gonna suggest an auction or bidding game, well, actually, I'm gonna suggest modern art, but that's neither here nor there. I will just always choose Skyrise over The Estates. But don't just take my word for it, because my word is one opinion and it's not your opinion. So go out, play these games for yourself, see if you have them land for you in a different way than they landed for me, and then go into the comments. You can tell me what you agree with, what you disagree with, so we can have lively, interesting discussions about a hobby that we love. But more than that, so we can prove wrong all the assholes and trolls and miserable people of the world by showing them that us having different opinions doesn't automatically make us enemies. It makes us human beings. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time.